Welcome to another Live with Courage special edition podcast episode, where we encourage you to listen however you like. Maybe on the porch with a cup of coffee, by the pool with your favorite tasty beverage, or our personal favorite, with your headphones on, tuning out the world. We are happy to have you here. Learn something new. Be inspired. Listen and visualize. Feel empowered. Live with courage. Welcome to a special edition Live with Courage podcast. We are here with three special ladies. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
So let's start by having you introduce yourselves. Michelle, would you like to start?
Sure, why not? So my name is Michelle Pacheco Turner. I was actually in the Army. I served about 6 years, one of which was actually med boarded, going through that process. I didn't get a chance to ETS per se. What am I doing now? I work for the federal government as an equal employment opportunity specialist in the diversity and inclusion field. And I don't know, the military has allotted me the opportunity to be able to segue into the federal service. So I feel like I'm still serving. That's about it.
Laurie, would you like to go next?
So, hello, everyone. My name's Laurie Johnson. I'm an Army veteran. I served approximately 12 years, and I transitioned out back in 2004. Now, in 2004, things were done a lot differently than they are now. Currently, I'm working as a state employee for the state of Texas. I work for the Texas Veterans Commission, so just like Michelle, I actually feel like I'm still serving. I'm still connected with veterans. That's what I got.
All right. Chrissy?
Okay. So I'm still actually serving. My name is Crismaldy. I still serve in the United States Air Force. I've been active duty for about 11 years now, and I've been to 4 different duty stations. Definitely going to be a lifer, so I have at least 9 more years to go. I really do enjoy what I do. I basically do admin for vehicle maintenance. So I just handle all the admin side for fixing vehicles.
So I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Christina Herr. I'm an Air Force veteran. I served for 11 years. I separated in 2008. Right now, I am pursuing my doctorate, and I'm very much focused on that for the most part. And other than that, Michelle's clapping. Other than that, I do this podcast. And let's see here. I have 3 daughters and a child. I'm a lifelong learner. Even when I'm not in school, I spend a lot of time trying to learn things. And a lot of the stuff that I like to learn is to help my community. So although I'm not in a position like a job that serves my community, I still continue to serve. Empowering others is my superpower. I'm really excited to have this podcast because it's almost Veterans Day, and that's where this kind of came from. Women serve just like men serve, and I think it's important that we showcase, what we have to offer the community, whether we're still active duty or we're a veteran. And oftentimes, I run across a lot of female veterans that still continue to serve even after they separate, or they serve outside of their normal duties when they're active duty. I know I did a lot of volunteering for my community. I didn't do a lot of off-base volunteering, but I did a lot of extra stuff within the military community. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what what were you able to take with you from your service to your post-service life?
There's a lot of things that the military has done for me that I think I could take on. And when I came in, I was really young. I was only 19. Going through basic and just learning a new skill set, and just the culture of empowering people, of making people better. It just really helped me grow. And before the military, I was not waking up on time. I was probably not motivated to do anything. And I just wanted to really live my best life. But what it really has taught me in the military is to have a sense of balance between kind of living your best life, but still getting work done. And so I think that's something that it's a lifelong skill set that I'm going to take on forever, just to learn how to balance and to have what they say, like those pillars in your life where you should be like, physically, mentally, emotionally, like sound, and just working on those things to be a better person.
So do you feel like maybe the military gave you some purpose, since you said like you weren't waking up in the morning and stuff before you served?
Yeah, it definitely did give me some purpose.
Laurie?
Yes. I believe some of the work ethics that I learned in the military serving carried over into my civilian life. Some of what we call like our values. Integrity is one of my strong ones. I'm really big on integrity. I mean, if you do something wrong, own up to it and move on. Just keep the mission going. And I carry that into my personal life and into my civilian work life. Being resilient and knowing that, and adapting, being able to overcome and adapt certain situations, and being resourceful. So when you come to a challenge in your civilian life, you're able to go back to the drawing board per se and draw in the sand again, a different approach to the mission or whatever it is that you're going through at the time. Another big thing that I'm taking with me is being able to work in diverse groups, whether that be due to ethnicity, due to religion, due to sexual orientation, being able to encompass all or welcome all diversity in order to and understand that not everybody thinks the way you do. And sometimes when it comes to like a project that we're working on, to be able to listen to everybody's point of view, because someone's going to bring something in that you didn't think of. And, the whole, life sucks sometimes. And being able to have that can-do attitude and, lace up again, put those boots on and get your head in the game and go back to those things that you learned in the service. And, that's helped me overcome a lot of challenges.
What about you, Michelle?
I think similarly to everyone, it was about the same. So I come from a military background as far as all the men in my family were military, right? But none of the women were. So when I joined I actually was in high school when I joined ROTC, and that gave me, like, I just enjoyed it so much that I felt like, you know what, I'm going to serve like a girl and I'm going to do the best me. So one of the things I can take from the service, and I have utilized it throughout the whole career, it seems kind of similarly to Laurie. I transitioned out in 2004, and it seems it's over a decade ago, and it seems so far gone. But times like these and days like these, right, you are always reminded in the service and the public work that we do, you're constantly reminded of what you do. That sense of drive, the sense of purpose, the meaning, has allowed me to be able and afforded me the opportunity. I finished my doctorate degree because of the military. I don't think if I didn't have, the GI Bill or the educational benefits that we do get as military people, that I would have been able to do that. I don't think that was something in my forefront. But getting out of the service forced me to figure out, okay, what else do I do? What Laurie said, strap your boots back on, lace them up, and let's go. And you have to enjoy the suck. That's something in the Army that we say a lot.
Oh yeah, embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck, right? So what does that mean? Is that you have to, okay, so what? Life sucks, but what are you going to do about it? How are you going to break through it? the military afforded me the opportunities to be able to be in public service, to finish my educational goals where I didn't even think I had any. And it just instilled that drive, even when things have happened that I don't particularly care to enjoy the suck in the moment or embrace it. It has forced me to do that and then figure it out. Just, okay, now it's point B to C, but then now I have another wrench in it. So that motivation and that drive, because the sense of purpose that I didn't maybe have before, it just never has gone away. Sometimes I want it to, but it just doesn't. So that's one of the things I have taken throughout my post-service career so far.
For the two that are parents, neither one of you mentioned your kids in the introduction, and I noticed that. Can you take anything from your military career and apply it to parenting? Because honestly, normally women, that's the first thing that we tell people when they ask us about ourselves is, oh, I'm a mom. And I thought it was like interesting that you guys stayed so professional on it. Maybe it's because of the environment we're in right now on this podcast, but is there anything that you take from your service that you can apply or that you do apply to parenting?
PT.
I gave up PT.
The physical training, right? So PT is physical training. So I took that from my military career. We utilized like the push-ups, sit-ups, the dashes, and even picking cherries. It was something that we did when you couldn't do anything else. You just put your hands up and you pick cherries. Just pick cherries. And I do that because after a while of picking cherries, because you can't really, how do you say, discipline children the way our parents probably disciplined us. So you have to find new inventive ways to be able to discipline these children. And yes, you could take off the Wi-Fi and all these other things, but sometimes it requires some physical aspects. And going and exercising is beneficial for everyone. So I have taken that aspect to be able to do that. But on a more serious note, I did it, to your point. It's not about staying professional for me, but it was more me telling you about me without that extra hat, whether it was the educational, maybe it was segue like it did in the other question that you asked, or now that you're asking the parenting question, it would segue into that. But so many times as women, we forget who we are as people, like what we've done. So I purposely did not mention that I had children because I wanted you and the rest of the panel to know me for Michelle, not so much me as a mom, because we tend to usually do that every other. So
honestly,
that's why.
Yeah, honestly, it felt weird when I actually added my kids in there when I was telling about myself. And I'm like, why am I even putting them in here? But I had written it down because I'm like, okay, let me talk about all aspects of my life. But honestly, I think you're right. I'm starting to grow into my own of not being defined by my children. And I thought, it was something that I noticed, What about you, Laurie?
Yeah, well, so kind of like what Michelle said, we do wear many hats, and when we close off with our civilian job and we come home, we still got to put that hat on and be a mom. Your day's never over. But I think why I left it out in my intro is I usually don't bring in a whole lot of my personal information. Just like if you were to go to my office, Christina, you've been in my office. I do not have photos of my, any personal photos on my desk. I guess I keep that really kind of like a line there until I feel comfortable, but I keep a line there between my professional and my personal life. A lot of it also has to do with me being a single mom. I deal with veterans and, again, diverse backgrounds. So you're also talking about veterans that have criminal backgrounds,
right?
That have served time, that have possibly have been in jail for, child molestation or pedophiles. And so I don't want my daughter exposed. And so that's why it's not on my desk. It's more of a safety thing. But I guess with the intro, yeah, when I jotted down some questions about, tell me about yourself, I immediately, just kind of referred to my time in the service and getting out, but I didn't choose the biggest role in my life and the most important role in my life. And that is, I'm a mom, you know, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a mom. And you talked about, or asked about things as far as skill sets and stuff that we learned in the military. Do we ever carry it into our, you know, parenthood? I do. I use the command voice. You know, I'm like, either you could have loving mommy talk to you, or you're going to have drill sergeant mama talk to you. Your choice. She knows when I'm serious by the tone of my voice. The other thing is police call. You know, I'm really big on trash being picked up in the yard. So I don't know if you Air Force folks, and I don't know what Chrissy's branch of service. I don't.
She's Air Force. So
Air
we've got 2 soldiers and 2 airmen on here.
So, well, Michelle would understand. You know, I mean, we're really big on police calls in the Army, is picking up trash.
We do
you
fog walks.
Yeah.
Oh, so my front yard and my backyard is like pick up trash, and then it's haven't really gotten a grasp on her cleaning her room, but I guess that's kind of like a teenager, preteen, you know, mentality. They just kind of live in their mess. So I'm glad there's a door, and I just closed the door. But that's something I'm working on, because I want her to have pride and ownership in what she achieves. So I would say, I bring in, you know, the whole command voice. I gave up on PT. Michelle sounds like she's like all fit.
Oh, Michelle doesn't do PT. Her kids do PT.
Oh, okay.
Michelle does not do PT at all.
I man boy to help do PT. And then my neighbor has a tire, like a truck tire. So we flip tires. There's little tires, there's big tires. So, you know, according to their size and weight, we flip tires.
I like
flip
that.
tires. You don't flip tires.
Oh, no, I tried it.
Oh, did you?
Not for me, but I did it.
So for me, one of the things that I took from my time in the service was perseverance, or the term, how do we get to yes? I don't like no at all. Don't tell me no. And I've never liked no. But in the military, I really expanded my problem solving abilities. And I learned how to get to no, or get from no to yes. And as far as parenting, I was a supervisor when my kids were really young. And I think being a supervisor, learning how to manage that relationship honestly helped me manage my parenting with my kids as they got older. Because I realized that people are individuals. I supervised my airmen individually. They had the same standards, and this is where I got this with my kids, because this is how I am with my kids. You have the same standards, but how you get to those standards is going to be different because of how you are as an individual. So I think that really helped me as far as parenting. And then the other aspect is once again, being a supervisor really helped me come into my own of empowering others, because that is one of my favorite things to do. And I didn't even realize it. Sometimes, you know, you do things in life and you don't even know you're doing it. It brought me a lot of joy, and I continue to do that. The other thing that I noticed that was mentioned by a couple of you was like the pillars of resilience, or resilience in general. Resilience is like a cool word now that military members just don't want to hear anymore. But I want to know, like, how do you feel about resilience since it was brought up?
I think Chrissy mentioned it, and I think it has to do, even though like the parenting question didn't apply, she definitely has airmen that she's coming into her own with since the younger generations she's supervising right now. And I know she mentioned the pillars, and she's Air Force. So one of the things, again, that the post-service afforded me was the fact that I became a master resiliency trainer for the Air Force. So I learned about the pillars, and even though the Army had their own kind of segue into it, and that's where the enjoy the suck and all that came from as well, or embrace it helped me understand resilience in itself is not just going through something, but it's growing through it and breaking through whatever it is. So it's kind of like what you said earlier, Christina, getting to the yes. So things happen. And again, you either embrace the suck, put your boots on, lace them up. What are you going to do when the wrenches of life are thrown at you? Are you just going to sit still in the moment and just say, okay, my world is over and that's it? Which I think that's where a lot of us, if we're honest, we go to, right? Like that's the first go-to. But then there are some of us that have learned this resiliency word and it's how great it is, right? And then we learn that you can stay in the suck or you can go grow through it. So you stay in the suck however long you need to stay in the suck, but it's about not staying there for too long or the whole entire time and just, okay, that's it. The world is over. I can't do anything else. You have to be able to be resourceful. So with resiliency comes resourcefulness for me. So it's you grow through it, you break through it. And I love the whole MRT, Master Resiliency Training course that, again, the Air Force, as a civilian, I was able to go through so that I can be able to, facilitate that type of training to the airmen and even the soldiers here where I am in Maryland. But it's a good thing and a good tool for them to have. And I wish that we had it earlier on in my career. Again, similarly to Laurie, I transitioned back in 2004. We didn't have that. It was just, hey, put your boots on, let's go. There was no like suck it up and drive on or shut up and color. There was no such thing as, hey, let's see how we can grow through this situation. And there were no pillars at that time. So I'm really glad that the military has shifted a little bit. There's still a lot of work to be done, but at least that's where I look at resilience and how it, like what it kind of means to me in that aspect.
Christy, what about you, since you're still active duty? Like, how do you feel about the whole resilience movement in the Air Force?
I think it's a great movement because a lot of the times when you come in, you're young, you're not as resilient, you feel things a lot more deeply and you kind of stay in that spot for a long time of like sadness or whatever. And just to have that culture and environment where, how are you going to push through? How does a no become yes? How do you get to that next step? It just really helps you not only on a personal note, but also at work as well. Okay. So I think it's great training. I'm glad that they came up with it, and I'm glad that it's part of the culture to be resilient because, life as it is already stressful enough.
Well, fun fact, the Army came up with it first, and then the Air Force kind of stole it from them. But so, Laurie, you mentioned resiliency too, but you got out, like you said, in 2004.
Right.
How did you find out about resiliency? Like, how was that brought to you?
See, so I kind of feel lost in the sauce right now when you guys are talking about like resiliency training. I'm like, oh, what? No, I don't recall that. So I guess the word, it's just the word to me, being resilient is being able to face challenges and overcome them. I really like what Michelle said about growing through it. We don't just go through it. You got to grow through it. And sometimes when you grow through it, you are falling down, but you got to pick yourself up and just keep moving. That's what I look at as far as resilience. So that's why I was kind of lost in the sauce when you guys were talking about resilience training. Is that some new training that the military is providing?
Yes, it is. So the Army initiated it. The Air Force took it on also. It covers the 4 pillars of mental, physical, social, and spiritual. And they have different trainings like balancing your thinking and gratitude. And I think they took a part out, but one of my favorite parts of resilience training is when they were talking about post-traumatic growth. And that lesson doesn't get taught enough. And it talks about how there's like this continuum that you follow when you go through something where you can go down or you can stay where you are, or you can actually grow from it, like Michelle was talking about, and it's called post-traumatic growth. I think the important part of that resilience training that people miss is resiliency is a way of life. It is not I'm going to use these skills only when life is hard. because if you don't intentionally practice them, it's really hard to use them when life sucks. Because you're emotional, you're tired, you're, going through something, you're distracted. And I think that's one of the important aspects that's being missed, and why the training in the program is not as effective as it could be, and why it's kind of made fun of, is that piece is not communicated properly by a lot of the instructors. So it's not to knock the training, because the training is amazing, but it's only as good as the people that are teaching it. But I thought it was very interesting that, that aspect was brought up. And I'm really glad that I asked that question, because, Laurie not even knowing about the training, that shows that people think about this stuff, whether they've, went through MRT or not. So another question I have, what has been your biggest challenge since you left the military? And of course, for Chrissy, you can talk about since you joined the military. Who would like to start this time?
I'll go.
Okay.
This is Laurie. So I think, and again, '04 was a long time ago, but what has remained steadfast in the whole, transitioning and being a woman veteran is actually feeling like I belong to something. Because once you get out and you take off that uniform and you start to, and it was before I became a mom, and I was just, you take it off and you have to re-identify yourself. You got to figure out who you are. But finding a place where I feel like I belong, and it took me many years. It wasn't until 2012, because I tried the whole, vet or military spouse thing. And I didn't feel like I belonged when I went to those family readiness group meetings and stuff, because I had a different, I guess, mentality when it came to the deployments and stuff. It wasn't like, the toilet breaks, you figure out how to fix it. That's just how it goes. And military spouses deserve a lot of credit, because they do hold down the fort when the soldier or airman or the military member is deployed. But it wasn't actually until, I have to say, 2018. And that is when here in San Antonio, a veteran and his wife created LinkedIn Mill City. And then I felt a purpose, that, that whole sense of purpose, but it was more of a sense of purpose and belonging. And that's how I met Christina. You start building your tribe again, and tribe, we like to use that word tribe, LinkedIn Mill City tribe. You build your tribe again, and you feel like you're more than just a mom. You're more than just that veteran. You're part of something. And so I think that was like one of my biggest challenges, was finding a place to belong. So
I think I'll go, since, Crismaldy's still in the service, so maybe she'll have a different take on it. But one of the biggest challenges is for people to understand that my not my command voice, but my directiveness doesn't mean that I am upset, or I'm just about my business. Like, I'm about work. If I'm told that the project needs to be done by a certain deadline, I'm not going to give you that deadline date. I'm going to try to make sure that I give it to you before the deadline, because if you're on time, you're late. And in my mindset, that's just how it's been. It's just been instilled that way. And the hierarchy of leadership, meaning you go through your chain of command in order for you to get things done. However, sometimes you do got to go above certain things, but never cutting corners, like trying to be slick about it, but just giving people the opportunity and that respect, right? So I say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I don't do first name basis to people I don't know. I still call people by the last names. It's just a thing that was, yeah, in '04, Laurie, it does seem like a really long time, but I've been DOD culture. I started my federal career back in '09, and I've been DOD culture for so long that other federal, and meeting other federal employees that are outside the culture, and even in DOD where they've never served, in the Department of Defense, when they've never served, even though they've been part of the culture forever, they still have a different mindset than those that have served. So it's been challenging, because then like, oh, doc is about her business, and I'm like, right, I don't see a bad thing
I know,
about
what's wrong with that?
yeah, like I don't see that what's wrong with that. Oh, I don't understand why you got to call me Miss or Mr. I was like, whatever you want me to call you, that's fine, but I'm not gonna call you by your first name, because we're not equal. And that didn't mean like I'm beneath you or you're above me. But if you're my supervisor, is yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That's it. It's just because of the respect. May not even be for the person. It's just for the title and what you hold and how my brain works. So, and I do that across the board. So trying to get them to understand that it's not a, I very highly dislike the word militant, because it's very negatively used. But I'm like, no, I'm not militant. I'm direct. And I have learned through resiliency and through just different, training to be able to soften the blow, so that they don't feel that I'm coming at them in a very harsh tone or my hatchet hand or something, because that's just a military thing. Like, and I just, when I'm in a group of other veterans or other active duty women or anything, that there's no problem. And I can attest to the sense of belonging to what Laurie said. I tried the military spouse. I was a military spouse for a while, and that's how I met Christina. And we were the only two that were prior veterans. So we thought about things very differently than the other spouses. And then I found a sisterhood of veteran women and military women as well, through a sorority that's for military women and or veterans. So that helped me get that sense of belonging too. Because again, we are always, I feel, to your point, that we're always looking to be part of something bigger than ourselves. That was my reason for joining the military in the beginning. So when it got cut short, I didn't know what else I was gonna do after that. So, but those are kind of like the challenges. I know it's like two, but that's kind of like the two
No,
part.
you can have as many challenges as you need.
But I just wanted to say, Laurie, I'm glad that was kind of like something that I never heard anybody else outside of like even the sorority and stuff talk about that sense of belonging. So that I know we're not alone in that. So
Chrissy,
Absolutely.
Chrissy, I want to rephrase this question for you. Did you have any challenges transitioning from being a civilian to being military over the last 11 years?
Over the last 11 years?
Yeah. Like when you're, because going from an old normal to a new normal is a transition. So, you joined at 19. So, I mean, you've been transitioning throughout your career as, okay, a brand new airman. Now I'm a supervisor. Like your full transition processing through the military. Do you have any challenges that, especially that you'd like to talk about?
I think originally, I just had like a being responsible transition. So, I mean, the military definitely taught me how to be responsible, to be accounted for in your actions. There's a lot of like accountability. I think as a young person, there was no accountability. I was like, that wasn't me. That was not my fault. But now there is a sense of accountability for every action that I take. But overall, like the biggest challenge for me being in the military the past 11 years was just everybody, you guys have a sense of like trying to belong. I think I belong too much and I'm too in tune with what I need to do, where sometimes my social life gets affected and, spending time with my family back home gets affected because I'm so in tune with work and I don't know how to turn it off sometimes. So I'm still learning. I'm still like, I do at some point need to have a better social life. At some point I probably do need to date, I do need to make time for other things. I'm 30. I should probably, look into having a kid in the future. Like, but I'm just sometimes it's really hard to just turn it off because, the airmen that I work with, they are my life. I have to make sure they're okay. And so in some aspects, I do feel like a parent because, you're teaching them how to be responsible. You're teaching them to take better decisions and to be accounted for everything they do. And so that's really my biggest challenge that I'm still learning how to work through.
So it sounds like you really embrace like the Air Force or military culture, and it's very much a part of who you are.
Yeah.
After hearing us kind of talk for a little while on this podcast, do you foresee any challenges you might have when you actually finally separate?
Yeah, I think that sense of belonging of like being part of a team, and I think I'm really gonna struggle with that.
Right. And I think it's a struggle for a lot of us that really loved being in the military and we really embraced it. So when it's finally time for us to leave, we're like, well, we don't want to go back to that. We love the service and what it stands for.
Hey, Christina.
Yes.
Oh, I had a alibi with the challenges.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to let you know. So when you're finished with your thought, throw
Okay.
me in.
Okay.
Okay.
I know for me, and this is going to be really weird because I actually wrote down notes for my questions, but my biggest challenge when I left the military was feeling separate, feeling like I didn't belong. My first negative experience when I separated out of the military, because I was also a military spouse afterwards, was I was having issues with my neighbor in base housing. And you got to understand that base house was mine for a year. And then I had just separated. So then like for 2 weeks, it was my ex-husband. So he got called into his first sergeant's office, and it was an acting first sergeant. And he knew nothing about what was going on with the house because he had just PCS'd in. He had no idea all the drama that had gone on with this lady, this crazy lady. And I had because I'm prior military, I had memorandum for records. I did. Date, time, everything, right? This lady was crazy. Let me tell you about this lady real quick, because I think we need some laughter here. My favorite thing that she did that I think is hilarious now is I was having a drink on my front porch, and she walked across my grass up to my front porch and said to me, you shouldn't be drinking because the devil is in your drink. That's why it's called spirits. And I'm just like, why is this happening to me? And that's not the only thing that's happened, but like that was one of the boldest things she had ever done. Another thing she did is she told my husband that I was cheating on him because I had some guy over at my house while he was gone. And I'm just like, he already knew about that. It was a friend's cousin who was a single airman, and I had him over for dinner. He drank a little bit too much and he slept on my couch. Like, my husband knew about it. So just crazy stuff like that. So I went into the first sergeant's office with him, and I was so respectful, and he was asking all these questions, and my husband at the time didn't know how to answer them. So I was like, well, on such and such a day at such and such a time, and dude would not talk to me. He kept looking at my husband at the time and asking him these questions over and over again, and I'm answering, and he's not even acknowledging me. And after I had left, he called my ex back in, and he says, don't you ever bring your spouse in here again, and you speak for her. She does not speak to me. And he told me about that, and I'm like, because I was an E5 when I got out, and my husband was an E4. Like, what? Like, what is this? And then I had to remember, like, I'm just a spouse. And it was really hard for me. And I was like, well, if I'm a military spouse, let me go be a military spouse. So I tried to do all the military spouse stuff. I didn't feel like I belonged there. And finally, I just stayed to myself. I was very isolated for many years. And when I went back to work, I was headhunted, for lack of better terms. They wanted me to put my military stuff up on my wall, because it would create a connection with me and the service members that I was trying to help. I was doing resilient suicide prevention. Almost everybody that was hired on this contract had no military affiliation. I was like the only one at the time, or the second one. So they're like, hey, you need to put the stuff on your wall. And I'm like, I don't want to. I left that behind because it was such a traumatic experience leaving the military early. And even during that time when I was working there for 6 years, I still didn't feel like I belonged because everybody around me were civilians and they were late to meetings, and they'd be like, oh, it's just because you're a prior service. Yeah. What's wrong with being on time? why do we need to talk about your dog and your weekend for 45 minutes during this meeting? So it was definitely a challenge. I didn't feel like I belonged. So I was in for 11 years, and it took me 11 years after to call myself a veteran. And that wasn't until I moved here to San Antonio. And a big part of that, I'm going to give another shout out to LinkedIn Mill City, where I found my tribe here. It was Ray Domingo, Samantha Domingo, Chuck Bunch, and Quincy Harper. They put this thing together, and it was meant to be a networking event. But to me, it was a place to be surrounded by people that understood me and where I belonged. So it was very hard. And I was so tired of hearing that everything about my prior service was a bad thing. Well, it's just because you're prior service. Well, it's just because you're prior service. And that's really hard. And I don't think civilians, non-military civilians understand how they make us feel. Just because we're prior military doesn't mean we don't have feelings. I don't think they understand how they make us feel when they're like, oh, it's just because you're prior service. It's just because you're a veteran. Or if I lose my shit at work and a non-military person loses their shit at work, I seem to be in more trouble than that person because I'm a veteran. And that's one of the things that I talk about a lot because it is one of my biggest pet peeves, being in the veteran community. So Laurie, you had something else you wanted to add to the challenges?
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared your story about you going into the first sergeant's office and, with your spouse. Because what if the shoe was on the other foot? Because this is like what you shared was kind of like a segue into what I want to kind of talk about is what if the shoe was on the other foot? What if you were the military member and he was the veteran that came into the first sergeant's office? Would that first sergeant have responded the same way and say,
no?
Because what I have actually faced in civilian life is I work alongside veterans. And there are some times when I feel like my voice isn't heard because I am a female. And even though I'm in it wasn't with this agency that I'm with right now. It was with other agencies where they would talk over me, or if I was in mid-sentence of saying something, it was like almost like they just like shut me out, and so with this agency that I'm with right now, there's some colleagues that I've worked with that I think as women veterans, we want our voice to be heard, so sometimes I will tune up the volume, turn it up just a little bit when I feel like someone's trying to push me off to the side, and I'll stand my ground. So some of the challenges, and again, as a woman, and as a woman veteran, sometimes you still feel like you're not equal.
Yeah.
In the sense, because I don't have that rank on my collar, and we work with, veterans. Some only served a couple years, some have served 26 years, and we all work together. I was an E5 just like you, Christina, when I got out. And you stating like when people get angry at work or what have you, or some civilian overreacts or reacts, not overreacts. A civilian reacts to a situation and a veteran reacts to the situation. It's more frowned upon the veteran who responded in the same way as the civilian did, but it seems like we're held to a different standard, and that standard is not always higher. So, but I just wanted to share that. So when you shared that story, it really made me think, what if she was on the other foot? What if it was your husband that came in and he's the ex-military and he's sitting there talking? Would that first sergeant have responded the same and told you, don't ever bring your spouse in here? And if I were you, not if I were you, but I'd be like, okay, I'll act like a civilian spouse then and a military spouse. I'm going to go walk up and knock on the commanding general's door for the installation because I'm not going to get in trouble for doing so. But it's going to trickle on down through the brigade, through the battalion, down to the unit, you know? Yeah.
So
So
I knew
don't
better,
don't
though.
push me. Yeah.
But
Because
and
you know
that's
that
one,
you open up a can of worms.
right. And I was very cautious in my behavior as a military spouse because I knew it reflected on my active duty spouse.
Yeah.
And I know Michelle understands that too, and I'm pretty sure you also understand that, Laurie.
Yep.
Chrissy, do you see anything that makes it challenging about being an active duty service member that's a woman? Do you get kind of talked down to sometimes?
Yeah, there's a lot of alpha males, and you sometimes have to speak up. Otherwise, you'll always be talked down to. Until you put your
Agreed.
down, nobody's gonna really respect you. So that's what I say to that.
Well, especially because you work in what seems like a male-dominated career
Yeah.
field, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could see how that would be a challenge. Like, do you just you said you speak up, but like, do you just repeat yourself? Do you assert yourself a certain way? Like, how do you handle those situations?
I assert myself, but I also ask them to explain where they're coming from, because otherwise we're not going to get anywhere, And so that why is very important to me.
Yeah, you've understood that you can't go toe to toe.
Yeah.
There's got to be communication, and I think that's really important too. Michelle, do you experience anything just as being a female veteran that you might think is different?
Well, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with the challenges, right? So because it's either I learned how to not do the hatchet hand, but do the other, when I'm pointing, I can't point, I can't hatchet, I can't do this. My voice sometimes has to go softer. But I'm Dominican, so I'm loud in nature. And then I grew up in New York and Miami. So when our families get together, so sometimes my accent comes out. So when I'm trying to get my point across, I do assert myself. My command voice does come out, and I will cut you off in a very respectful way, working in the field that I worked in. So when I was segueing out of the military, they just always try to get us to do something back then, right? It wasn't the Wounded Warrior program. It was something else. But I was exposed to the EO training, which is the equal opportunity training for the military side of the house. So years later, had an opportunity to become an equal employment opportunity specialist with the Army. So I entered the internship program, which teaches you a lot about diversity and inclusion, whether it's diversity of thought or of people, whether it's, again, complaints process of discrimination, which actually helps you think back when you were in the service or civilian life or whatever, those little things that people used to do to you or say to you. And again, what I suffered even on the corporate side of the house, because I worked for corporate America for a while. It was a lot of that. Like, I had appointments, for example, as I was going through the transitional period to get out, had a lot of veteran appointments. So a lot of that, I got fired from my corporate job because of that. The doctor was actually going to put me on family leave of absence because I had to go through a 3-month treatment while I was transitioning. They actually overheard a conversation on the phone, and they let me go the Friday when I was supposed to give them that paperwork on Monday. So in hindsight, is 2020. That's actually illegal. It's discrimination, not only for a veteran's preference, but it's also discrimination for disability. There were so many things, and they were looking at they're hearing my conversations. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 women in the, out of 25, and it was only mine. So as a woman, so not only my veteran's preference was, hindered, and that was just corporate America, right? But hindsight is 2020. Understanding the discrimination process is really a big deal. Do I suffer from it now currently in my roles at EEO? Not as much, because I have learned to assert myself. But earlier on, I did. I was like, oh, well, maybe they don't mean it that way. Maybe that's not what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm overthinking it. And I would excuse people's behavior because I was trying to not be that veteran. And because it honestly, right, as soon as we go, we answer a different way. It's like, oh, it must, and I have heard this, oh, it must be PTSD, right? And that sets me off, because then now I didn't even, I do have it, but that's not the point. Wrong is wrong, right? So I get a little colorful because then at that point, I take it on like it's everybody. I'm carrying the torch for all women veterans. I'm carrying the torch for everyone. And there is differential treatment whether you're in the military, whether you're out. When you're in a subset, discrimination or stereotyping, it's still very relevant, I think, and not only across the world, period, where there's this balance, whether you're a woman, whether you're a non-veteran or a veteran woman, and you're in a room full of males, then, oh, you got to go get the coffee. That's happened to me before. And I was like, actually, I'm the presenter. Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Pacheco Turner. How are you today? Go get me. You get to go get it for me. Because that happened to me in a training with military civilian people. And I walked in the same way I look like now, right? I wasn't dressed any other way but professional for them to think that I was the one, oh yeah, hey sweetie, go get that coffee. And I'm like, we got Starbucks
in the 1960s or something? Like, what is this?
I was like, oh, we got Starbucks catered? I don't, where is it? I mean, so and I look at it and I use it as a joke, right? As a way, as an icebreaker to tell people, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge people based on the way that they look. That in itself is discrimination. Again, especially in my field, because people sometimes insert foot in mouth and they don't even understand it, because their thinking is what hasn't changed, because they're still in that 60s mentality.
Right.
But it's still 2020, and we're still that disbalance between women and even, again, women veterans and male veterans, depending if they haven't bought into this whole diversity, right, that women still can serve. they get to that, oh, well, I know more than you do because I'm a guy, but they don't ever want to verbalize that. And I think if, kind of like what Crismaldy said, if you just get to the why, like, why do you think that way? Help me understand, why is it that you think I should go get you coffee? Like, you get it for me. And then it kind of brings down everybody's level, I think, and then starts a conversation. But I don't think very many of us are apt to be able to do that. Does that make sense?
Right.
So, but if we get to that conversation and get to that why, because I'm going to find out why you feel like that's the need. So I think that's really been kind of like, again, the same challenge. I don't think it's going to change until we start having conversations to get it to change. So
yeah, one of my frustrations is I am that veteran. I am that veteran, and it's not okay, because I feel like it's only okay for males to be that veteran. When I would go to LinkedIn Mill City, not all the women, most of the women would be drinking like wine, and I'm walking around with a straight cup of bourbon, and like people are like looking at me like I'm crazy. And then like the guys would go out and smoke a cigar, and I'm like, oh, can I come join? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm that veteran.
Yeah.
And, I have tattoos, and when I would go to work, I would wear a polo and khakis or jeans and a hoodie. And it really set me apart. And it was only because I was a woman, because there were guys doing it and there wasn't an issue, in my opinion. It was like, hey, why are you like this type of thing? Or people thought I had an attitude, which, I mean, everybody has an attitude, but like, I guess mine was bad. And I think a lot of it had to do with the way I dressed. And like you said, you're Dr. Turner, like, and we've joked about this, me and you, where when I start doing public speaking, I'm going to come out with dirty chucks, jeans, and a hoodie on, and people are going to be like, who the hell is this person with a doctorate? Like, is she just setting up the mic? Because I don't think I should be judged on how I look. Don't judge me on my tattoos. Don't judge me on my nose ring. Don't judge me on my hoodies or my funny t-shirts. It's one thing if it's not okay for everybody in the office, but don't make it about me being military. Like, I had this situation at one job where we all cut up and talked about things, right? Like a lot of inappropriate things, but because I was the veteran, I was the instigator. They must have been just listening as I'm talking about all these inappropriate things at work. Now, was it right that I talked about inappropriate things? No, but I was trying to fit into a new work environment. And I'm like, oh, well, they talk about inappropriate things. Let me try to fit in. And then all of a sudden it became my fault. And I'm like, I just got here and these women, mind you, talk about this stuff for like all the time. So I don't even know if I made sense with what I said, because it's just such emotional topic for me, because I'm smart, I'm capable, I served my country. Honestly, I'm a better veteran than I was an airman. And I know that sounds funny, but I think this was my path. And it's just so frustrating that it becomes a negative thing to people, me being a female veteran, and I don't like it at all. So I don't know if you can sense the emotion in my voice, but that's where it's coming from. I want to start with Chrissy on this last question. What advice would you give other women coming into the service or that are young into the service?
To be, I guess, open-minded, you know, to be patient. It definitely teaches you to be patient, because there's a lot of hurry up and wait in the military, a lot of unknowns sometimes. So I would say be patient. I would say, you know, be open-minded. A lot of people, you know, they get to their first base and they're like, this is not, I don't like it. You know, go to the next base and see, because not every place is the same. Give it an actual chance. I know they say this a lot and it's kind of cliche, but you know, it is what you make of it. And so there's a lot of benefits. You know, I see a lot of people that come into the military, they don't even do school. I'm like, why not? It's free. Take advantage of all the benefits it has to offer.
But with the patience, like, what do you mean by being patient? Like learning the ropes or something like that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of patience with supervisors. There's, you know, you have your good ones and then you have your bad ones. And as a young airman, you can't really just lay the law. You have to be respectful as you say things. And so there was a lot of patience, because sometimes it's a learning curve for them to just be a brand new NCO and, you know, have to, you know, lead people. Not everybody's great at it. Sometimes it's a learning experience, trial and error. And so I had to be patient with those new supervisors.
For Michelle and Laurie, what would you like other women service members and veterans to know about the other side after you serve?
I'm going to go with what Crismaldy said, because I liked it. It is what you make it, right? So similarly to what I said earlier about being resilient, you got to grow through it. You got to embrace the suck, because you will have the sense of that sense of belonging that you once had. And this is if you didn't want to get out. Or if you do want to get out because you're like frustrated, an NCO pissed you off and you're like, you know what, that's it. Or one of the airmen or the soldiers made you upset and you're like, you know what, that's it, I'm done. You know, I've done my time. It's somebody else's, and you kind of drop those, you know, you become that DD-214 crew. When you do that, right, even when it's your choice to get out, what I have found is that you still miss that aspect. May not be like waking up at 4 o'clock in the, you know, old dark 30, but it is that you miss that aspect of what you once had. It'll come at one point, even if you know, like, and from what I've learned with other veterans that I've talked to and other women veterans. But then what are you going to do about it? Are you going to grow through it? Are you going to utilize your resources to be able to grow within yourself, like personal, professional development growth for you? Similar, like what Crismaldy said to even the young airmen coming in, or any other military members, that anybody that wants to, I want to join the military. Do you really understand what that means? because it's not something that, oh, I want to travel the world. COVID, right? You're not going to. So I want to go for education. Maybe you'll be able to be afforded that opportunity while you're in, if the mission calls for an opportunity for you to do that. But when you get there, sometimes you can't go to school. For me, school was not on my radar. I've graduated high school. I checked that box. I was in the military. I checked that box. I was a lifer. You were going to have to tell me to drop papers at 30 plus years. But that's not what life happened to me. Like, life happened to me. I got hurt. Things followed. Then I'm looking at my life like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do now? I had no children, but I was married. I'm like, well, I don't want any kids. Like, I don't want that. Then I'm like, well, I guess I could just go to school, have that GI Bill thing, or might as well just do that. And I never stopped. And I never stopped because someone told me that I would never, wouldn't amount to nothing. That was in the military. Not so great NCO said to me that I would have been better off flipping burgers at McDonald's. So I said, okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it. And I walked on. I said other colorful things too.
I was going to say, I know that was not your response.
No, not at all. I got in a lot of trouble because my mouth wasn't, I hadn't learned the nice Michelle yet. So.
You are good at being nice, but not nice. Like, it's like this magical thing.
Chrissy tells me that all the time. I'm petty, and nobody knows I'm being.
You are so petty.
I'm not at all. Like,
no, nope, you're not petty. You're such a.
I'm. But but I didn't. I went into the military, and then I applied for a job, and then the job told me that I didn't have enough education for me to be able to get that job. And it was like, looking back at it, it was like, I don't know, an associate something salesperson. And I'm like, you don't even need a degree for that, but okay, whatever. And then I decided that I wasn't going to allow anybody to tell me. And again, that it goes back to that drive that I talked about earlier, right? What else am I going to do? Okay, you're going to throw that at me. I'm not going to flip burgers for the rest of my life. I got you. So then that same person, that same NCO retired from the military, but found out that all these things that I've done with my life and got a message to me. But then I was very nice back. And then
those that can't see her face, she just shook her head and said, no, I wasn't.
My message was, you relayed a message to me, and I was 18 years old, and you crushed my military dreams by telling me I don't, not that I don't belong in the thing. I think I was not the typical, I've always been girly girl, but I've always been a tomboy at the same time. So this is just me. But you tell me to go in the mud, don't let the exterior fool you. I'll go in the mud. I like mudding. I like doing all these crazy military things. And people look at me now and they're like, really, you? I have nails and my hair is done all the time, but makeup and everything. But no, I will go in the mud because I like playing in the mud sometimes. That's just what happens. But she was a very girly girl type of NCO and didn't like the fact that I was both, right? But it's one of those things that you will have not so great people in your life, but what can you learn from those not so great people in your life? Because at some point she wasn't happy with her life, right? Like, looking back at it, she wasn't happy with her life and what she was doing. She had been in the military forever and she was still that same rank she couldn't get over. So obviously, hindsight, right? Learning back, and I dissect my life a lot to see what I could have learned. What could I have told Michelle at 18, at 19, that I couldn't, if I were to meet her now? And I would tell her the same thing: embrace the suck, because it's going to make you who it is that you are now. So I never let that stop me. The job that said, oh, you don't qualify because you have too much, you don't have enough education. Then I got another one that said, oh, you're overqualified. And I'm like, what?
You're like, you can't win.
I was like, what is that? But at least I'm overqualified. So that means thank you. So I wrote back, thank you so much for that. You didn't say you didn't have enough. you got to pick and choose, right? So you're not going to always get the yes right away. But it is when you get those no's and when the door closes, there are other opportunities out there. You just have to be able to be open to be able to get that. There's a lot of benefits. And I know some of the veterans and service members will be like, oh, no, they're not. They're still the same. I got out in 04. I'm still growing through the veteran process system because that medically, that's our benefit. And one of those things is like the door closes and you hit a wall. Then you got to go back to ground zero. And then you grow through it again and you hit another wall. At some point you want to give up because sometimes you feel like the system is coming against you. But then there are so many resources out there now that we didn't have. I know for me, I didn't know they existed before, you know, now, right? And then there's so many people out there and so many organizations out there trying to help veterans and things of that nature. So I just think that that's, you know, that's a good thing. And then you do have the networking opportunities. I wish, again, I'm in Maryland. I am in a military town. There's a huge military base out here, but there's not huge military people like I would say organizations kind of like that whole LinkedIn, that would have been really cool even before COVID to get involved in. But again, I do have to give the shout out to my sorority. It's Kappa Epsilon Psi. We are worldwide, but they have afforded me the opportunity for me to network and meet people that do work in the veteran system, that do work in other federal agencies, and that are just, you know, trying to figure it out too. You know, that they're just retired and happy, or they, you know, they just got out and going to school and living their best life. And you learn from all those people that are in your journey. And I just think that on the other side, there's so much more, because life is not over until it's over. So you just have to be able to, you know, embrace it. I don't know what happened there. You just have to be able to embrace it. I know I've probably gone on more than I need to, but
that's probably why that happened. It was like, you know, the guy with the hook on Apollo.
Laurie, I'll let Laurie talk about it now too, because I mean, I'm sure she has a whole bunch of stuff to say.
Yeah, Laurie, what would you say to?
Well, for one, you know, I personally want to sit there and thank that NCO that put that fire in your belly. You know, you started going to school and you never stopped. And so that is the drive. And so, yeah, you know, props to that person for trying to put you down, because all they did was lift you up, you know? So, yeah, advice or things that I would share as far as those that will be transitioning out, or just other women veterans, even our women military members, even for you, Chrissy, is your admin, right? And you're in a male dominant field. Education is key. I was like Christina, I didn't go to school when it was free, 100%. I don't know if it's still 100% free, because a lot's changed, but I didn't go to school. I waited until I got out of the service to start my associate's degree. But I was always pushing, and Michelle probably remember doing the old, what were they called? You get the yellow books in the mail, and you, yeah. So, doing those things. But I pushed my soldiers to go to school. You know, I had a E4 female vet or military service member. She wanted to get out. She was done. You know, she didn't like the hierarchy. She didn't like the structure. She wasn't showing up to work on time. I was getting my ass reamed. Can I cuss?
Yes, I already did.
So I was getting my ass reamed by the first sergeant and the company commander, you know, because we'd show out in the field for training. Well, where's so-and-so? After training, I go to her house, knock on her door. She's there because she has a migraine. I'm like, you don't get to do that. You still show up to first formation, and then you take yourself to sick call. You don't just decide you want to stay home. And then she's like, well, I just want to get out. I said, well, you have two choices. You get out the easy way, you get out the hard way. You know, and I broke it down to her. You only got 4 years. That's it. Well, she went on and she took over my section when I left, and she continued her military service. So I push school, I push education on the junior enlisted, get it done. But I was always putting my mission was my priority, and that was being an NCO. That was my priority. It wasn't about me going to school, it was about me prepping them. But all I did was hurt myself with the education, because when I got out, I was a human resources clerk or specialist when I got out. That out in the civilian sector, you're nothing more than a glorified admin. I didn't have the education, the skills, the certifications that the HR field in the civilian sector were looking for. So I wasn't qualified. What I would tell folks is stay connected with not only those you're serving with now, but those that have served before you and have transitioned out. Let them provide advice to you. Take what fits you, because not everybody's transition story is going to be the same, and it's not going to fit you. Some people get out and they walk straight into a job, and a high paying job. Others, they get told they're not qualified, and then they get told they're too qualified. So you got to just keep marching, just keep going, and stay connected. Look for organizations that are in your area that you can join up with. One here, and it is nationwide, but it's called The Mission Continues. The Mission Continues was started by some veterans that felt like they didn't belong to anything anymore, so they got out into the community and partnered with the community to make the community better. So I volunteer here with the San Antonio platoons, and we get out there, we go to elementary schools when schools closed, and we start painting the playground, the equipment. We've painted huge US maps onto big black pavement for the kiddos. We've built them flower beds, benches, tables. And what it is a community of veterans that have these skill sets that can operate a table saw, but they don't need to be certified or a license to operate that table saw. Everybody brings different skill sets to the group. And what I love about it is you involve your family. My daughter would go out there. Her and her best friend would get up early on a Saturday morning. We put on our Mission Continue t-shirts on and go and paint, and they loved it, So here in San Antonio, the Alamo Dome was doing this huge event, and the whole city was. And so we were there, we were painting the media room that the Alamo Dome was going to utilize for media purposes, and just to be a part of that, even though you're behind the scenes, feels really good. And just stay involved, stay connected. And you have to find your worth. You have to know your worth, because don't let those negative voices start talking to you, because they've talked to me. They told me I wasn't good enough. They've told me that I wouldn't mount to where I want to be. I wouldn't get there. Those negative voices start talking to you. You got to shut them down. And the way that you shut them down is you reach out. You get involved in those community organizations, whether it be LinkedIn Mill City, which LinkedIn Mill City just recently held their first virtual event. We just did it on Thursday night, and we had about 100 people there from all over. We had people from Delaware, from Hawaii, from North Carolina. We just got on, and it was just a huge Zoom meeting with all these folks, and we did our little breakout rooms and stuff. So you can, get involved in ways like that. So that would be what I would tell folks to do.
Man,
so
y'all took my answers.
Well, we're sorry. Well, Michelle, since you could just go make us some coffee right now.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
No.
She made it for herself. So
that was just a joke. We know it's doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Coffee Maker. That's who it is.
Right. Like, you can call me what you want as long as it's not late for dinner. I'm good. Don't
I should make you a coffee mug that says Dr. Coffee Maker on it. Or I got my PhD so I can make you coffee.
Yeah, I like.
So the advice that I would give, and I'm just honestly reiterating some stuff that has already been said, but the transition, we are given this one size fits all transition when we leave the military, especially for the folks leaving now with the programs that are put in place. And there is no one size fits all. Your transition needs to be your own. Take what you can from other people. Not everybody needs to be a project manager. Not everybody needs to be making six figures. Honestly, you need to get to know who you are and what you value, because your values are different than the military values often. So understand what you value. My brother values having a lot of income. I don't care if I have like pennies, as long as I'm doing things that I love to do. So, and that's not to say that he's wrong. That's just the difference between us. And stay true to who you are. Once you get to know who you are, take what you can from your military service, add it into who you are as a person, and stay true and continue to grow. You might be this person today, but 30 days from now, you may have learned something new, and it's okay. I've grown a lot, especially over the last 5 years. And the toughest thing for me to be is authentic, but it gets easier every day that I do it. The other thing is the biggest thing that a lot of service members miss when they leave the military is the camaraderie. When you PCS, you are given a new set of people in your life, right? You have new coworkers and new opportunities to meet people. And it's actually one of the challenges for military spouses, because they don't have those opportunities, right? So, but when you get out of the military, especially if you move, you lose those connections, right, with folks. And it's really hard to find them again. But there are so many different creative ways to create those connections, not in a traditional manner. And I'm going to talk about a few of those that I've done. So look for different nonprofits that have camaraderie type of events, like Wounded Warrior Project, or local ones like we have Women Veterans of San Antonio. So you have a couple of opportunities there that I've done, but look in your area, expand your search. If there's an opportunity, seize it. And if you don't like it, stop going. The more you try, the more you're going to find your place. I've even found some camaraderie through Facebook groups and LinkedIn. I've met a lot of great people through LinkedIn, and sometimes we only have one conversation, but I've made a connection with them, and it's a new memory for me, and I still feel connected to the world. One of the Facebook groups or pages that I like to follow is 22 Until None. And there's some other ones out there, Battle and Distress. There's some, like if you have dark humor, there's some dark humor ones out there, like Disgruntled Veterans. Just something that's going to make you feel normal. You can follow veteran businesses. Two of them that I really love to follow are Black Rifle Coffee and Grunt Style. Especially with Black Rifle Coffee, because they're always doing outdoorsy things and talking about funny stuff. And they have their own little online magazine that they post things about. But either one of those, you might find some type of connection following them. And there's a lot of other ones, America Bourbon. I can't think of all of them off the top of it. I'm veteran, y'all. I'm super veteran over here. So I love all this veteran stuff. So that's kind of how I'm a problem solver, and I mentioned this before, especially knowing how important my resilience is to prevent suicide and to just live my best life. I try to find those unique ways to do it. And especially with COVID now, you have to find unique ways. And to be honest with you, I think my podcast is also another way that I stay connected. So just find a way to stay connected the best way that you can. LinkedIn Mill City has really been a big part of my life here. And I've made a lot of great friends there, like Laurie. Even doing the Military Spouses Club thing, that's how I met Michelle. So it doesn't matter how you meet people. You just have to keep trying, because you will find your tribe. And it may be one person from this and one person from that and one person from this. You build your own table, and then you have podcasts like this where I have Michelle that I know and she doesn't know Laurie. And then Chrissy is Michelle's friend. So we all kind of just now created our own little table here at the podcast, where even though Christy's active duty, we still all can understand, because we have that one common link, and that is serving in the military and having a servant heart. So that would be my advice to those separating out of the military. And if you are a woman veteran like me, where you like being a veteran, like I am super vet, like I said, there are others of us out there, connect with me. I'm going to restart Coffee with Christina soon. And let's just have fun together. Wow, we've been on this for a while. I wasn't expecting it to take this long, but I've really enjoyed myself. And this is a unique experience for me, having a panel, so to speak, on my podcast. And so I've stretched myself with this, and it was definitely challenging, but I'm so glad that I did it. I'm very glad that I got to meet you, Chrissy. Are there any final words from anyone before we sign off from this awesome Woman Power Empowerment podcast?
Yes. So just like Christina, I support those veteran organizations, those veteran businesses. I'm always there. Christina knows I'm game. She may call me last minute, and if I'm available, I'm jumping on. I'll throw a hat on if I didn't do my hair, that kind of thing, and throw some lipstick on. I look good, right? I look like I can present myself cute now, right?
I love the glasses too.
Yeah, I made sure I was color coordinated today. So the other thing is, when you're making those connections, just know not everyone's going to be your cup of tea. Nope. And that's okay, because Christina's not everybody's cup of tea, but I like Christina because she shoots it straight from the hip.
Not everybody can enjoy a fine glass of bourbon.
Yeah. So, I got a veteran mouth too, I drop F-bombs all the time.
I'm glad you called it a veteran mouth instead of a sailor. Like you talk like a sailor. Like, I think we really need to rebrand it as a veteran mouth.
Right. And just what Michelle was saying earlier, it's like, when you try to assert yourself, sometimes you're looked at as being pushy or bossy, or no, we got a mission to complete. Let's get it done. And so a lot of times people may refer to me as, being bossy, or being like controlling, or mother hen. And it's not that at all. But again, not everyone's going to be your cup of tea, and it is okay. So just sip on your Kool-Aid. That's it. Just sip on yours.
Chrissy, do you have any final words?
But thank you so much for inviting me. I had such a great time.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad. Michelle, do you have any final words?
No, I think we covered it all. Again, thank you so much. I'm glad that, we had this opportunity to do it. So I'm glad that, we can be able to be in this type of forum and get to know, again, Laurie, appreciate getting to know you for this time. Thank you.
You ladies both too.
Christina's friend too, and she's my cup of tea too. So
I'm a glass of bourbon.
Okay.
I don't do tea. I do coffee and bourbon.
Same thing. And I do appreciate Chrissy again. She's part of my tribe as well. So I'm glad that she was able to shed light. I thought it was important for her to shed her experience through the military perspective, because again, as Christina said, we do share one common, kind of aspect. So thank you again, Christina, for having this. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So bye everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.